I think we might even one day see infused restaurants. I think more people will start to accept that cannabis is just an option for your intoxicant. You might want wine, you might want to go to a wine bar, you might want beer, there's breweries. But if you want like an infused meal, there's going to be like an infused restaurant. Hi everybody and welcome to Different Leaf. I'm Brit Smith, ready for a deep dive into two of my most favourite things in the world, marijuana and food. So most seasoned stoners will have their preferred method of ingesting cannabis. I'm a joint smoker for sure, but there's a lot of people out there who opt for edible marijuana products like cookies or brownies or gummies. Sometimes it's because folks don't like to smoke, but often it's because the process of ingesting pot through your digestive system actually gives it a longer-lasting effect with more of a physical body high. So edibles obviously have this great appeal for people who consume for certain medical reasons like physical pain or insomnia. While there are a lot of products to pick from nowadays, buying treats from your local dispensary is not the only way that you can eat your greens. As cannabis culture continues to develop in the US, we're starting to see a new trend of fully infused formal dinners, sometimes 3 or 4 courses, where people will get together to eat marijuana-infused meals prepared by a professional chef. This episode, we're going to talk about edible marijuana of all kinds, from the traditional home-baked cookies and hash cakes of our teenage years, all the way to the creation of pot-infused syrups and cooking oils. This week, our guest is Lianne Whalen. She's the head chef at Cultivate, the first recreational cannabis dispensary to open on the East Coast. Lianne currently leads an incredible team of female food gurus who work to create the perfect weed-laden edible products and consider all the new ways we can more easily introduce cannabis into our cooking. Lianne, tell me what it was first like when you got into the kitchen as the chef at Cultivate and you were like, okay, I got to start making edibles for a living.
One of my favorite stories to tell is when I started, it was a stainless steel table, a convection oven, and an induction burner. And now we have a staff of 10 females. We are in probably 17 of like the 35 dispensaries in Massachusetts as a wholesale partner. You know, we've created our SKU line from 1 or 2 items to 12, including topicals and tinctures. And I just really love what I do, and I love being able to help people. And honestly, it's kind of a dream job.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there that want to cross over whatever their specialty is into cannabis. And it's just not that easy for every industry. No. But for the chefs and like, there's a lot of creative people out there that work with like food or packaging or marketing and branding. And I think that the cannabis industry is really fertile ground for those creative kinds of people. So when you first started and you had, I guess, a bit of a blank canvas to sort of make, you know, what products you guys thought would work. What was the first thing that you started with? Was it the typical cookies and brownies?
When we first opened in November of 2017, we were medical only. So we offered cubes and chocolate chip cookies, and we've since changed the recipe. It is a really delicious cookie on its own. You know, We are also working on a cookbook so that people have ideas on what and how they can use our products in their day-to-day life, other than just consuming them, like how they can incorporate them, like make an ice cream sandwich or make a shake. Or, you know, we also do chocolates and caramels. And one of the other passions of mine has been baking. So I love to bake. And I have a lot of friends that have allergy issues or concerns. So we try to offer a product that can accommodate some gluten-free people, some vegans, a little bit of both. And we did do brownies for a small amount of time, but they are really hard to mass produce and dose appropriately for recreational customers. The other really fun thing is when we opened, which was a crazy day, it was raining and snowing and muddy and wonderful and full of hundreds of people in lines. We offered a pumpkin spice dust, kind of playing off, you know, New England in the fall. So I really also love molecular gastronomy. So we were able to create an oil-based powder that was infused that people could sprinkle on whatever they wanted.
So I want to ask you a little bit about leading this team of females who are back there creating cool stuff like that. What's that like for you?
I honestly probably never thought that I would be working with an all-female staff, but I love it. I'm super proud to be able to say that all of the people that work in the kitchen are females, especially in such a male-driven industry. I mean, even in the hospitality industry, which is where all of the females in the kitchen have come from, it's very male-driven. And that can be, you know, good and bad, but I feel like we're able to work together as a team, communicate very effectively, come up with all kinds of creative and fun ideas. Everyone has a different background, but they all have come from some sort of culinary or kitchen job or experience. And that is so beneficial because while we are a functioning kitchen, it's definitely much more of a science, and there's a lot that goes into creating the products that we create, and there's a lot of time and money and specifications that we need to meet. So it's different than working a line, and I feel like we're a really great community. We're a family, and you know, we check in on each other and make sure that everyone's doing okay. And, you know, if you have a bad day, everyone understands and knows that, you know, it's okay and we'll push through it and we're there to support each other. And I think that it's very unique in this space to find 10 females working in a department.
It definitely is. I think there's community that comes around any group of people that cook together. There's just something about cooking that's just so humanistic. You know, it's just the center of the family. For me, my mom was a baker. When I was very young, she was a cake baker. And so she'd stay home with me and my brother and she'd bake these big, intricate wedding cakes. And they had like 3 or 4 tiers. It was the 80s, so you know how they looked. But, you know, she kind of instilled in me that there was this chemistry behind it when you're cooking and baking. Like everything's made out of sugar and butter and flour, but it's the way that you mesh it together and the way that you heat it. And it's a whole science around it. So I've always been really interested in the science of cooking, and I've never quite gotten the hang of it. But what is it that changes about the way you're cooking when you add cannabis to the mix? Is there anything chemically that's different about it?
Not necessarily. It's just you kind of have to figure out what you can create with the specific types of cannabis products that we use to infuse. So for example, distillate is an oil. So if we're infusing something with distillate, that needs to be oil based, or we need to convert the recipe to contain an oil versus a tincture, which would be water soluble, which we would need to create with the distillate, but add an emulsifier to make it soluble in water. So some of our products that are more traditional, like the cookies or caramels, contain distillate, while our gummies and maple syrup would contain the tinctures.
So it's not just grabbing your stash anymore and then melting it in your butter.
You can totally do that. It's just, this is on a larger manufacturing scale. We need to use, you know, the distillate or the tincture. And actually, speaking of the tincture, there are a lot of different tinctures out there. We produce a couple oil-based tinctures, which is great for the consumers as well, because they can dose themselves at home. They can create that infused dinner experience versus, you know, a wine dinner. And I've also been able to create, one of my projects was creating a tincture that contains a more natural emulsifier. A lot of the emulsifiers that they use in tinctures produce like a bitter off note that isn't really palatable. It's not really something that people want to consume. Yeah. So I'm very happy to say that we have been able to come up with a recipe using a natural emulsifier. And I feel like that's also very unique in this space and kind of makes us more multifaceted, because our products are not only carefully crafted and curated, but we also really care about how they taste.
I was going to ask about that. Why are there so many in the edible cannabis space? Why are there so many sweet products and you don't find that many savory products? Is it kind of because there's like almost a dirt taste to the weed?
Actually, speaking of that, we do have a savory option. We offer a savory cheese cracker or wafer, really. It's similar to kind of like a cheese straw or biscuit that they sell in the South. But it is very interesting that it's all sweet. I think that's just what people are accustomed to. But I think that there's such a market for savory options. People create sauces and hot sauces and barbecue sauces. But I think it is a little bit harder to kind of mask those off notes in some savory items unless you add in certain spices. So our cheese crackers are a little bit spicy, but we find that people do tend to gravitate towards the sweets. But I think that that's just because that's what they're familiar with.
Yeah, I think there's new stuff coming out all the time about how to ingest cannabis in different ways. And going back to what you said earlier about people having bad experiences, I have not met a person who hasn't had a bad experience with an edible. Like, everybody's had an experience where they've had just a little bit and then they've gone, nothing's happening. And they don't realize you have to wait for a long time. So, they take another one and then it's like, whoa, that was too much.
Too much, yeah.
I've been there, but I think that a lot of the time when you're having something sweet, for me anyway, it's difficult to stop eating it. So I've had way too much of the sweet stuff just because I don't know, it tastes good. I liked it. So I kind of want to go for the savory stuff that I don't think tastes as good, but still has an effect on me later because I know I won't overindulge in that stuff.
We, for our crackers, for example, we offer a package of 5. So they're 5 milligrams each. So it's a 25 milligram package. And I feel like that's a really good starting point, but it is a different texture. So people think they're going to get a Cheez-It or, something that's a little crunchy, and this is a little bit more soft, but the ability to even turn that into something else, like sprinkle it on your mac and cheese or use it as a crouton in your salad. There are so many options. Like, we offer an infused olive oil, an infused MCT oil, and we have a graduated dropper in each of them that tells them exactly how many milligrams that each serving is, and you can dose to what your needs are. So it's a very safe, calculated experience. And I think that that's amazing to be able to offer that to people, not only for the medical community, but also for recreational.
Right. There's a huge recreational market. And especially in the last year or two, we've seen more and more infused dinners coming out. There's like a lot of underground infused dinners that, I don't know, friends throw, and people sell tickets to them in the cities sometimes, and you can come and just kind of get catered to. What do you think about infused cannabis products moving into that recreational world by crossing over to full dinners?
I love that idea. I wish that we could experiment a little bit more in that realm or sponsor a catered dinner. I mean, I have a catering background. Pretty much everyone in my kitchen kind of has some sort of culinary degree, whether it's from a bakery or a fine dining restaurant. So I think that being able to understand the science and the dosage is very important. Like, that would be my top priority if we were to, do a dinner, because again, people have very different levels of how they feel. If you understand the appropriate dosage and, start low, give them like a very, very low milligram dosage, like some of the shows on Netflix do, I think that this could become more of a mainstream option for people.
I think we might even one day see infused restaurants, much like we have bars now that just do alcohol. I think more people will start to accept that cannabis is just an option for your intoxicant. You might want wine. You might want to go to a wine bar. You might want beer. There's breweries. But if you want like an infused meal, there's going to be like an infused restaurant. I can see it growing to huge things and being like a chain restaurant, and it's just going to grow really huge, What is it that there's one thing that you would want to keep about the way that we're doing things now on the small scale before it really gets national like that?
I feel like it's really important for people to understand what the cannabinoid profile of each product really is. A lot of our customers generally go for the highest THC, but that's not always going to be the most beneficial. There are so many benefits to all of the terpenes. And even in creating a curated culinary experience, like, that's part of the experience, the smell, the taste. Some things are good for anxiety or sleep, or some things will keep you up, like indica versus sativa versus hybrid. So just understanding that there are benefits